So good morning to everybody and welcome to this Tavola Aperta open table. The artist today is Mingwei, and we are very pleased to have you here today and to have all our guests today here.
Thank you.
Mingwei presented two projects for this Viva Arte Viva Biennale. One is here at the Central Pavilion. It is called When Beauty Visits, and it's in the beautiful Scarpa Garden here in the Central Pavilion. And the other one is the Mending Project at the Corderie d'Arsenale. So both of the projects involve the participation of the visitors and of course of the artist or his assistants. So I would like you to introduce, if you like, the project here at the Giardini first, because I think it's quite interesting, even for the people that attended the performance this morning.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you all for being here. It's a hot summer noon. If I were you, I would be just going there with a champagne and take a nap in the forest. But thank you all for being so patient and kind and being here. For the project I'm doing for the Giardini here is called When Beauty Visits. A very simple project with three phases to it. The first phase is that the project happens outside of Venice for 1 year before the project opens. So for 1 year, I went around and collected stories of dear friends, of family, of strangers I met on the train or bus station when I'm traveling. They told me these moments that they encounter beauty, but I encourage them to tell me stories rather than object of beauty, right? So that often the stories are quite complex and they're usually about relationship between them and the person who they encountered. So within all these stories, I selected 10. So that's the first phase of the project. The second phase, it happens in the Scarpa Garden for the duration of the exhibition of 6 months. When you go into the garden, you might see either myself or other garden hosts in a white costume with ankle bell. Let's say I might come up to you and say, may I invite you to a private garden for just a few minutes? The reason why I say just for a few minutes, because often people would ask, how long is it, or
yes,
where
it's the
is
same
it?
With the Tavola Aperta, like saying
Exactly.
Yes,
Yeah. Like my wife is waiting there. I only have 5 minutes, so I just say a couple of minutes. So when they sit down, I say, please wait for me for 2 to 3 minutes. I will come back with a gift just for you. So when I return, I give them an envelope. And then I tell them the key moment to open this envelope is when you encounter your next moment of beauty. So it's really up. So that begins the third phase of the project because you bring that out with you. And we don't know, and you don't know when that moment will be. It could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, it could be a long time from now. My other garden host, she often say, I hope you find it soon. But I try not to say that because it's almost like giving them too much of a pressure, like, oh, I'm looking for a moment of beauty. That could be quite anxious for people. So take your time. And one very beautiful encounter we had just a few days ago was my assistant Sandy invited an elderly gentleman to sit. So she came back with this gift, and that is when the church bell started tolling exactly 12 o'clock, and this gentleman started crying. So later on, this gentleman met Sandy and somewhere down in the other part of the park, and he came up and said, I need to share with you what happened back there with me. So he said, 24 hours ago, exactly at the moment of the bell when it was tolling, I scattered my wife's ash in a canal. And then 24 hours later, you invited me to sit in this beautiful garden and receive such a gift. So he said, this is something I never realized an art could do for one person. And I never imagined that my work could be of that power. It just somehow these works find their own power and language to express. And I believe that each artwork has its own life and it comes to visit us, but somehow it goes back to where it came from at the right moment. Yes.
Yes, you already told me this story, and I think it's really important. Even one word you said, to take your time, because
Yes.
we were thinking about this Biennale and the fact that the visitor, if they really want to enjoy it,
Yeah.
must take their time to
Yes.
attend the performances, to watch the videos. So it's even a kind of gift.
Yes.
The reappropriation of time
Yes.
in this particular moment
Exactly,
when
yeah.
nobody has time to do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. And when Christine asked me to participate in this biennial, she already kind of knows she wants to bring the Mending Project into Arsenale. And then she said, I would like to commission a new project from you, and I know a perfect site for you, since she knows my work quite well. And she said, the Scarpa Garden would be perfect for you. And I was so happy and feel really honored to continue that sense of beauty from Carlos Scarpa to us. And within about half an hour, I said, this is just from the top of my head. May I do a project about beauty? And at that time, I didn't really know how it's going to be, but I already know it's a project that's very underwhelming. Because for me, the biennial, for me, often many of the projects are very colorful and very loud and expensive. But I feel the way I wanted to address my aesthetic is through very, very quiet space and time. And like I was telling you earlier, every day there's only 20 encounters. So only literally 20 people can own that work each day. And when you think of museums and biennial often are about numbers of visitors. So this is kind of anti-biennial in its aesthetic. Yeah.
And it is the first time that that you do a project about beauty, or not? Because I think that you did a lot of, not a lot of, but some project about the gift,
Yes.
the meaning of the gift.
Yeah.
But I found out that it's the first time that you mention literally beauty in one of your projects.
Yeah, it is the very first time I verbally mentioned the word that is kind of highly discouraged in my graduate class, discussion class. I was at Yale in 1995 to 97, and if somebody says your work is so beautiful, that's terrible. You're not supposed to say that. That's not a compliment. For me, it's not right. It's all about beauty for me. So I say to Christine, may I address that? And she's very supportive. And she said, of course, this is where your voice should come out. Yeah.
So while the project here at the Central Pavilion, so start eating, please. It's a meal, so you can start eating.
Yes,
And if the project here at the Central Pavilion, I think it's yes, it's new.
Yes.
It's absolutely new. But the project at the Arsenale, you already did it in 2009,
Yes.
and for a very particular important reason that I think
Yes.
that maybe we can share with the
Yes,
the
yes,
guests.
yeah. So the project I have at Arsenale is called Mending Project. So when you go into the gallery, it's the first one on the right. Very simple project. Everyone can bring anything for the mender to repair. Often we realize that not a lot of people know that there is a mending going on. So, and most of us not wear things that needs to be mended around. So we usually just say, if you don't have anything for us to repair, we can just do an embellishment, and that worked well. So in when you see the installation, there are a lot of spools on the wall and threads attached to the cloth. So visually, it has a kind of a rhythm to it. And you don't really see the beginning of that work. So what you were talking about is that the seed of that project came from a very sad beginning in 2000 when the airplane hit the World Trade Center. My husband was working in the building. Luckily, he was not in the building when the airplane hit, but he lost 400 of his best friends and colleagues. So I didn't know that he survived. So I just went home and started taking out everything we have and repair and put buttons that I didn't have time to do, but I have all the time in the world to do it now, until he came home 8 hours later. So it took me about 9 years to really process that moment and then transform it into something much more poetic. I think it's easy for me to criticize people, but it's hard for me to move away from that and create something more meaningful. Yeah, so therefore we have the project called the Mending Project.
Yes. And about your artist process, how do you proceed in creating or projecting your artworks? Is there something particular you always do, or every time it's different?
Very good. Okay. So often people ask me, where do ideas come from, or how do I get inspired? There are two things I do to be inspired. I swim a lot, and then I also take very long hot baths. Oh, thank you. I'll just pass. Yeah. Oh, I'm good. Actually, I'll just have some. Yeah, thank you. And having said that, I really believe ideas come look for me rather than I go look for ideas. So, like I was telling my friend earlier this morning, that tonight when you go to bed, and then tomorrow morning you wake up as a different person because you had some dreams that happened to you, right? But we didn't go look for the dreams. The dreams come look for us. So it's very similar to this. Oh, I'm good, thank you. Yeah. It's very similar that these ideas come look for me. But having said that, I need to prepare myself for that. So through swimming, through taking walks in the forest, so put myself in a very, very relaxed situation and create a mental and emotional void. That's when ideas come and stay. Sometimes ideas are very, very big, but do not have the space or institution to host such a project, but it stays. And sometimes the institutions are there and fundings are there, but then the idea are not there. So it's quite an organic process. Yeah.
One thing that I find out that it's different maybe from the relational art or participatory art is that you did the most part of maybe all of your artwork inside an institution or a gallery or a foundation, a museum. It's like a space, an institutional space. And is there a reason for that? Your personal reason for that?
Yes, it's a personal reason for that. I always think that I'm actually quite a shy person. And my projects are like canaries. They're extremely fragile. And they really need the structure of the golden cage, what we call a museum or institution or biennial, to host them. Otherwise, the project will die and will not be able to thrive. So imagining if I do the Mending Project at Grand Central Station, it would work for other artists, but for me, I probably will not be able to focus my attention between this stranger who brought something for me to repair and myself. It would be just too many things going on. Therefore, I'm always at the mercy, not only with the strangers who come to visit these projects, but also with the institutions who so kindly host these kind of work. Yeah.
If somebody has questions, please interrupt us. And what about the education?
The education. So I was born in Taiwan, and when I was about 12, my parents asked me if I wanted to leave Taiwan because at that time, Taiwan was under dictatorship, and all the boys need to serve in the military until 25 years old. If you don't leave before 13, so I say no, I would like to leave. So my parents took me to Dominican Republic because I didn't get a visa to go to America. So they thought, to be physically close to America, that Central America would do, which is fine. Just get me out of Taiwan at that time. And then when I was 15, I got a visa to go to America and then went to live in San Francisco. But my parents didn't immigrate with us. My father is a pediatrician, a doctor, and my mom as a housewife. So they just stay in Taiwan. And I went to a boarding school and studied with Benedictine brothers. So that was a very kind of old European education. Then college, because my father was a doctor and so was my grandmother and a lot of cousins, I thought, okay, I'll just be a doctor. But after 4 years of studying, I showed them it's not because my grades are not good, it's just I don't feel comfortable in this situation, and I always faint when I see blood. And that doesn't help. So, and they're very open. They just say, what would you like to be? So I said, maybe in architecture and textile. So I was at California College of Arts for 4 years to get my education in textile and architecture. So I was a weaver for many years. And then when I applied, so we study many of the artists in the show, actually, as a textile artist. And when I was looking into going to graduate school, I show my professors all these weavings I'd done. And they say, it looks lovely, but it looks like doormats and table runners. So if you're going to go into any of those programs, like Chicago Art Institute, Yale, or Cranbrook, that would not work. So you need to do something for yourself. After that very difficult realization, I spent about a year just creating 3 projects that are really close to my heart. So one was 100 Days with Lily. When my grandmother passed away, I had all these things I wanted to say to her. And I want to experience the cycle of life. So I carry what we call a narcissia plant from the beginning to the very end of that plant for 100 days wherever I went. So that's one of the projects. And luckily with 3 of these type of projects, I was able to get into Yale for 2 years of sculpture program. And that was the best 2 years I ever spent in terms of academic years that I ever had. Yes.
So you took your time.
I took my time, yes. I was already 33 when that happened. And I didn't really, people ask me, did you know you wanted to be an artist? And I said, no, I had absolutely no idea there's such a thing as a profession called artist. I just didn't know people, because when I was in Taiwan, we went to the National Palace Museum to look at all these great old masters that lived 1,000 years ago. So I thought they were all dead. But never realized there's a living artist thing. So I'm very lucky in that way that I kind of just find my path.
I have a lot of questions, but yes. Can you use the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about how you share your work, because as you say, they need a certain environment.
Yes.
So how do you feel about that, and how do you want to share or do not want to share your work?
Yes, yeah. My work tends to be very much about fate and chance. So, for example, like when Beauty visits, there were 22 encounters each day, but we didn't have a schedule on the didactic because I wanted to be a surprise for the person, just like when you walk into a garden, a butterfly landed on you. And that is so miraculous and magical because we don't know when that butterfly is going to leave. And so those are the kind of experience I hope that you all encounter. But if you didn't encounter the actual performance, I would say do not worry or be anxious about it because the timing is just off. But it's not about good or bad or right or wrong. It's just that you didn't encounter that moment. Yes.
Actually, she's quite lucky because she was chosen today by Sandy.
You were? Okay. May I know how was that for you when she first came up to you?
I felt very happy because I had been watching the garden empty, and I had read what was the intention to have these encounters, so we left.
Yes.
And then she came and found me, so I was very, very happy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I was just in Frankfurt setting up a project called Sonic Blossom at Stedel Museum. It's a little bit similar to this one here. So a person in a very formal costume walks around in the gallery very slowly, just like Sandy here, without the ankle belt, so she didn't have the ankle belt. And she might come up to a person and say, "May I give you a gift of song?" If that's what you want, then she invites you back to this beautiful gallery where Rembrandt and El Greco paintings are and sing one of the Schubert's Lied just for you. So I was there and witnessing this very beautiful moment. Interesting enough, half of the people who were invited says, "No, I don't want it." I don't know if it's particularly a Northern European thing or because that project was presented in East Asia, in Taipei, Tokyo, Beijing, and Seoul. There's only one person says no. But when it was at the Met or when it was at MFA Boston and at Seattle, every day half of the people says no.
Really?
Half of the people. So maybe the East Asians do not know how to say no, even if we don't want it. But the European are more like no. But again, it's really who you are. It's not about the singer or the garden host. It's about where you are mentally. Yes.
I had a question. If I
Yes,
may.
of course.
You were saying how ideas were coming to you. How much of your own experience you always bring into your project? So is that something that is relevant, important to you, your own experiences that you've had in the past?
Yes. So this gentleman's question is how relevant is my own experience for the project? It is extremely important for me because I feel the project, when it's activated, they start speaking back to me as the creator of the work through participation and fine-tuning it. For example, when Beauty Visits, the one over here, is the first time that we ever presented. But Mending Project, we've done it 9 times already. So that project is already pretty matured. But with this one here, I didn't really have a studio or a real person to test. So when it was on for the first week, it was very powerful to see this thing come alive. It's like giving birth to a child. It's kicking, it's crying, it's shitting, it's asking for all the things you need. But as the creator, I need to address all those issues and listen to what this child wants, really, literally. So now, after about almost 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months, it's probably it's at the adolescent time, still kicking and kind of rebelling against it, and I'm still listening and learning a lot, and definitely would be a very wonderful ingredient for my next work that I'm doing. Yes.
I have a question over here.
Yes, hi.
Hi. Your work is very inspirational. It touches many people's lives.
Thank you.
But your work will only be lasting for 6 months at the Biennale this year.
Yes.
But it should be remembered for years down the road for people to learn from. So my question is, how do you prefer the institution, the historical archives of contemporary art that preserves the activities of the Biennale to preserve the essence and the true spirit of your work for future students, researchers, artists, and critics down the road? Thank you.
Very good question. It sounds like the conservator who was asking me about that. Whew. Okay, so the true spirit of my work, it's about memory of each person. So having said that, when an institution wanted to acquire or document this kind of work, how does it go about? So there are several institutions discussing the acquisition of this work, these several works in my practice. So I just told them to, I say, okay, let's all get together in September in a vineyard in San Helena, which is in Northern California. My sister has a beautiful vineyard there. And we'll have a week there. So we're going to sit around like this and discuss how do we collect this kind of work. So the person who will be joining me will be the person who establishes the new media conservation department at MoMA. And also some other curators who have curated this kind of work, and the artist himself. So maybe I should leave that question as a question mark at this point, because I still don't know exactly how this is going to be done. I have some ideas, 80% of ideas, but with the conservation specialist for new media art, he's going to teach me so much. So I'm very, very excited about that. But very good question. Stay tuned.
It's because I read that you suggest not to film or record very long videos of your performances or
Yes.
your artwork.
Yes, yeah. I, being kind of naive, I say, please don't record or video the actual experience, not because because I have the experience of someone sitting there receiving the song and have a video going like this, and that really is diminishing the whole experience. Yeah, so I know Tino Segal has a different idea why not to record, but for me, it's more about just record it with all your senses, but not with this machine at this point. However, to be realistic, when a museum or institution wants to document or acquire this kind of work, they need to pass it on to the next generation of curators, and they can't just say, "Oh, use your heart." But that's quite poetic, but it's not useful. So I need to address that in a more realistic way. Yes. Yeah.
Scientific.
In a scientific ways, yeah. Yeah. So if any of you have some ideas, let me know. Yes.
I have a question about the Mending Project.
Yes, please.
I had the opportunity to experience the project both ways. Once with a friend when it was an embellishment project.
Yeah.
And yesterday I did it as a true mending project.
Yes.
And I found the experience is very different.
Of course, yes.
So, what can you say about that? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, because the feeling I get is that you extended the project to embellishment because people many times don't have things to fix. But then, what have you learned from having done that?
Yes. From the very beginning of the project, I said, okay, it's all about mending. But very quickly, because it was done in a commercial gallery in New York in 2009, and only about 5 people visited the gallery. And so I was just sitting there like, oh, what am I going to do? No one is here and no one's... So people will come and say, but I don't have anything for you to repair. And I'll say, I have scissors. I can cut a hole in your... So I extended the invitation to be not only just about mending, but also embellishment. For me, it's important for this person to sit in front of me and exchange, the verbal exchange. So either embellishment or mending, it is important, the difference, but the true importance is this trust between these two strangers. Yes. So embellishment it's quite lovely, actually, when they allow me to make a mess out of their beautiful scarf. And after 20 minutes of conversation, it was really quite unusual that this person allows me to create something for her or for him. So the other day, a lady sat down and she seemed very emotionally quite dark. She wasn't smiling, she was just sort of sitting down like this. And she didn't want to talk. So I said, could I repair or mend something for you? And she goes, I have a broken heart. And I'd never experienced that before. So I said, okay, may I borrow your scarf for the next few minutes? So she just sort of put it there. So I decided to do a little embellishment because there's no torn. So I directly just went in and say, tell me what happened today. And very quickly she told me her marriage is falling apart. And she was just with her lawyer and just signed a divorce paper. And this whole 20 minutes of conversation was basically a monologue. It was very moving for me. And I didn't really have to do too much of talking, but just repairing this thing for her and adding some beauty to it, it's just enough. So that's between repair and embellishment in that way. Yes, yes, please.
Hola.
Hola. ¿Cómo está?
Bien. My English is so bad. Sorry,
No worries.
because my durational experience now is not speak English living in California. Thanks to Jessica, she translates a lot.
Yes, of course, yes.
But I'm so happy listening you was living in my country,
Yes.
and I would like to know which year you was living in Dominican Republic, and
Yes, yeah.
if you was working art there.
Yes, I was there as an early teenager, so it would be 1978 to 1980. And there was a very big typhoon at that time that tore all the trees in the park. And I remember before that typhoon came, my classmate and I all went to the park and ate all the mangoes we can because, the mangoes is going to be falling off, right? So we were just going there and just gorge on the mangoes. And those were some of the most beautiful time I ever had in your beautiful country. Yes.
In that moment, there was changes political time.
Yes,
with
yeah.
Balaguer,
Yes.
very dictator,
Yeah.
and the changes to democracy in the
Yes.
70s. In that moment, I was 6 years old,
Yeah.
and I was working with mango, transforming the mango with animals and
Yeah.
putting in my
Yeah,
yard
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
mango with
Yeah.
like people, animal, like
Yes, yeah, it's Dominican Republic has a very special place in my heart just because it's the first time I live in a Western country and the first time I left my country actually. So it's a very special place. I actually had Dominican Republic passport until about 2 years ago. So I had 3 passports, now only 2. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
I can ask, in the catalog there's a text on beauty and being just
Yes.
by Elaine Scurry.
Yes.
I'm assuming you chose that text?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so could we talk about it a little bit?
Yes. So Marcel asked me to select these artists that, not artists, the books that really influenced me. So I actually had her book with me when I traveled to do a site visit. For me, beauty always comes with a sense of just. It's only my way of looking at beauty. If the beauty has it's far away from the sense of just, I feel that kind of beauty is much less diminished. Yeah, and the other three books I described to her was by Louis Hyde, who's a wonderful American philosopher who wrote a book about the gift. So that book is about how each artist, when we create our work, it's really a gift to the society. And often it doesn't have a monetary means to it. The other two books I brought with me when I came to visit the site, one is called 东京梦华录, which was written in 11th century by a Chinese who used to live in the northern Song dynasty, and when the barbarians came in through the Great Wall, he was being pushed to the south. So the book is about the splendor of the ancient city, which reminds me of Venice. That's why I brought with me. And the other book is called A Pillar Book, also written around 11th century or 10th century in Japan. It's a court lady's diary of her days in the Japanese court as a lady in waiting with the empress. So those are some of the books that are hugely inspiring, especially with Lady Shosinagong. She writes these little entries about her day. So, for example, when I was here looking at the Scarpa Garden, that night I opened the pillow book, and it was an entry of her. The entry starts with, "The most grotesque thing in the world are." So she said one of the most grotesque things for her is to see a very old man with white hair, unruly white hair, and also unkept kimono, sitting underneath the sun, picking his nose. And I just thought, those are such amazing entries. That is so telling of who we are and what era she's living in. And those are the moments that I treasure when I travel. Yeah, and so is with her book about beauty and just. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I was reading somewhere about your work and came across you. You said that Suzanne Lacey
Yes.
played an important part in your development, and she's the reason that I went where I am now at Otis College of Art and Design and the public
goodness.
practice
Wow.
program that she founded.
Yeah.
So I was curious if you could just say a little bit about the role she played.
Yes, Suzanne is a huge inspiration for me. When I was at California College of Arts, and we call it CCAC because they dropped the craft part of it, my department, I was getting a little bit bored with just weaving. So I started taking Suzanne Lacey's class and about public art, about feminist artwork, and social practice. So, and she was one of the professors who told me these are table runners, you can't do this. So, I have to say my career as an artist and my practice as an artist owes a lot to her because she shows me it is possible to do this kind of work and have some critical dialogue with the society that we all live in. So, yeah, say hello to Suzanne for me, please. Thank you. Yes.
No, it's...
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. In the Arsenale, you have the Mending Project with all of the colored strings
Yes.
that go up to the wall. Opposite it is Maria Lai's project of the books that are stitched. And then here in the Giardini, the Japanese pavilion has an extraordinary work in which fibers have been pulled out from the fabric, and then this landscape of industrial structures. I don't know how much of this is coincidence, how much of this was intentional on the part of the curator, but certainly I think we have the idea that threads and connections can be read as a metaphor for our time, the webs we weave and so forth. And I wonder how much you feel that your work needs to stand by itself or whether it participates in a kind of metaphorical language for our time.
Okay, yeah. Good question. So when Christine invited me to be a part of the biennial, she already has an idea of which work goes where. So that's why I'm very lucky to be next to Miss Lai's work. And with the Japanese pavilion, because it's not Christine's territory, so that's a very coincidence. Yes, a lovely coincidence. So I think, although I came from a textile practice, and often people ask me, are you still doing textile? I say, yes, I'm actually doing what I call social textile, because there is a warp and weft into a connection between people and the society. So I'm trying to elevate that kind of tactile part of it into a more cerebral and ephemeral component of the warp and weft. So in many ways, I'm still doing weaving, but in a completely different way. Yes. Yeah.
Hi. Hello.
Is it working?
Yes.
Is it working?
Okay.
One thing that I noticed about each of your individual works, whether it be the mending or the singing in the gallery, or the giving of the gift, symbolizing the beauty, is that it's about a very significant moment between you and one person that you've taken out from the pool of within the public. And I'd really like if you could talk a little bit about what the significance is of that, about having that one moment with that one person in order to allow them to communicate, well, allow yourself to communicate, what it is that you want.
Yes, yeah.
To that person.
I think the difference between, let's say, most of the social practice work and what I'm doing is that I focus too much on the just one person. It's a very intimate project, just one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. My professor Rick Terawaya at Yale, we had a very critical conversation about his curry project when he cooked for all these people and then he disappears. While I was doing my dining project at Yale. So through lottery, I just selected one person to come and dine with me when I cook the meal just for this person. No one sees the actual experience. So the person would come and dine with me in the studio from 7 o'clock on, and no documentation done. So Rick say that when people look at our work, people are going to discuss these two work together. So let's have a conversation about that, which I hugely appreciate because it did happen many times. So for him, his work, superficially, it's very extroverted because he cooks this banquet, everybody comes to eat. As an artist, it's extremely introverted because he disappears. He's not there to eat with you. So he just cooks and he disappears. Whereas for my work, it's the other way around. Superficially, it's very introverted because it's just, two people eating behind, in the studio door, nobody sees it. But as an artist, it's a very extroverted work because I was there one at a time to cook a meal for you and just to speak with you. So the role is reversed. That put me in a situation that I truly enjoy these very intimate conversation with just one person. And again, because my personality, I tend to be quite shy. And with one person, I'm okay. Or when I'm doing this is fine. But if this is quite funny. Someone asked me, if you see someone who's doing the project you're doing, will you participate? Will you run to it and say, hey, here? I say, no, I run the other way. It's a very strange psychological thing. I tend not to participate in participatory artwork. Maybe I was talking to one of my friends who's a chef, and he said, oh, I understand that because I usually don't like to eat what I cook. I like to go to eat other friends' cooking or somewhere else, but I don't really eat what I cook for restaurants. So I personally enjoy the one-on-one, and it's hugely satisfying. However, after saying that, it's also quite draining. And I know when I was doing sleeping project, which is to sleep with a stranger every night and in 2 different beds. So I want to see how you and I can be intimate without being sexual. And we still have the courtesy and generosity of saying good morning the next morning. And that's hugely draining. So physically I'm sleeping, but emotionally, I'm actually doing a project, so it's really not the most relaxing project. Yes. Mm. Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
So, in my country, America, historically, the notion of philanthropy was one where what came from sort of the concept of noblesse oblige, where the very wealthy gave to the poor. And the tax system supported that, encouraged that, and that was sort of the notion of giving.
Yes, yeah.
And over time, you see evolving how people think about the poor, people who are needing, and giving is always a one-way street. And so I wanted to ask you a question a little bit about your Mending Project and the two-way street of it. That could you talk a little bit about the impact upon the mender? Because we spend so much time thinking about the impact on the person receiving the gift, that in fact, oftentimes the gift is also the other way.
Yes,
is it not?
very true. It's true in all of these projects, and I'll talk about mending, and I'll share with you a story about mending. So when I'm mending something, it seems like I'm doing you a favor, but it's not. It's really quite equal because you trusted me with something very intimate, and for me to change it and alter it and share stories with me. So the other day, another elderly gentleman came, and I was telling you this earlier. He came with a piece of sweater that looked kind of shrunken already. Someone knitted because it clearly was knitted by somebody. So I said, wow, and tell me a little bit about this piece of clothing. And it had a tear here so that someone already mended and was coming apart. So he said, my mother knitted this for me. And she mended this piece when I was 6, and it's the night before I left for America, and he was from Australia. And he said that was the last time I saw my mother, and I'm 85 years old already. So that story really made me a stronger person and humbler, just because of this experience. So the gift is coming back even more powerful than what I wasn't really doing much for him. But that was really quite amazing. Yeah. So the project I'm doing, it seems like the gift is giving from, let's say, the singer to the receiver. It's not. It's coming back tenfold to the singer. So when it was at the Met, the singing was happening in the Freer and Sackler room, which was this great room with 2 Tang Dynasty Buddha in there, 10 feet tall. So one of the lady invited someone sitting very far away, and clearly she wasn't interested in being a part. She wanted to observe what was happening. So the Korean lady, the singer, went up and said, may I give you a gift of song? So this lady kind of nodded and then said, okay. So she went in and sat down. The lady started to sing, and this person started crying and then literally started howling so loud that we could not hear the singer singing. So after 2.5 minutes, when the lead finishes, the singer came up and just to to make her feel more comfortable. So the lady said, this was my daughter's favorite song. And the last time I heard the song was at her funeral. And I came from Germany, and I know what you sang, and it's as if she was in the room. So the singer and this lady just hugged each other for the longest time. And I think the gift is coming back in tenfold to the singer in that way. And I never really intended that way when I created the work, but quickly I realized that's how the work is. It's expressing herself through experience. Yeah. Thank you. Any question from there? Yeah. The food must be very good.
I was thinking about the power of... No, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
power of healing.
Yes.
And we were thinking about the word repair and with Kaderatia even.
Yes. Yeah.
So the power of art to be healing and something that helps even. So
yeah, I usually don't see that when I create the work, just because if I think my work has a healing power, it assumes the other person is damaged, and I don't like to assume that. We all have personal histories, and we all have places that are fragile and weak. So just happen that this work touches those very fragile moments, and that's quite beautiful for me. And sometimes, like when people say, "No, I don't want that song," then that's perfectly fine. You know, it just doesn't move them that way. Or when people when beauty visits and they sit down and right there they open the gift and read it and go, "Oh, that was okay." You know, things like that. It's all right. And I often say, you know, my work is like a glass of water. If you're extremely thirsty, that glass of water is life-saving. But if you just came back from swimming and had an Evian, bottle of Evian, that glass of water is nothing for you. Yeah. Yes, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of contemporary art, because it opens so many possibilities, and that's why in many ways we're all here as observers and as participants. We are all open for some kind of possibilities that we haven't thought about or haven't experienced before. And hopefully when we leave this beautiful garden, we are a different person. Yeah, and I think that's why we're all here. And the food is great too.
not for you, the food.
That's okay. Yes.
Any question?
Yes.
You have said the word beauty and beautiful many times, so
Yes.
for me that is essential, the sense of beauty, but you said it has to be linked to being just. One of the ancient, by now, art that we both enjoy very, very much is the time of the Wiener Werkstätte, the Jugendstil, the Art Nouveau, where it was beauty for the sake of beauty. And it wasn't perhaps just because it was made for the very rich people. You had to be very rich in order to be able to have it made. At the same time, we now all enjoy it.
Yes, exactly.
So can you comment a little bit on beauty and being beautiful and art? Because you make it sound like for you it's okay, but it's not universally accepted.
Yeah, it's definitely not universal. And I think that's a lot of question when you have a discussion about what art is and what art could be and what art could do. And it's the same thing when I went to the National Palace Museum. That was basically Qianlong Emperor's collection. And he was a great emperor in 1700, but he robbed a lot of those things from other people, and other people robbed from other people. So what we inherit is really quite unjustly acquired and created. So when I say when beauty has to come with a sense of justice, maybe I'm talking more about the kind of work I experience these days in contemporary practice. But then I'm still thinking about that. I'm still quite baffled about what just is. For example, usually the winner says what the just is, but not the loser. So that's another very complex situation. So my answer is definitely open and up for discussion. Yes, thank you.
I have a sort of follow-up on both questions, the healing and the beauty. And I would like to bring up the curator, because curator comes from curate, from healing too. And
Curator.
Curator is
yes.
the word that relates to healing. And,
Yes.
and this Biennale in general, the curator has been criticized negatively by some, I think unjustly, but I think, as you know, critics by definition don't have time. They come the first day, they run around and they write a review that night. And one of the main criticisms has been basically too much fabric too much sewing, too many textiles. and, and since you are one of those artists.
Yes.
I'm not asking you to speak for the curator, but how do you feel about that? I mean, what's your feeling about that?
I think in general, I usually have some kind of question mark about art criticism, just because, or music criticism or literature criticism, because it's one person point of view, and also art is something that supposedly for everybody. And what you say, it's fine, but I think it shouldn't be what everybody has to agree, yes. I feel extremely lucky and happy and honored to be a part of this project with other practitioners who also love fabric. And it's really quite a bold gesture for Christine to address this issue, because when I was at California College of Art and Crafts, they dropped the craft because they didn't want to include fabric in it. And I think it's really a sort of lacking of self-confidence when people start analyzing things in such a way that you do not belong to this class, you belong to this class. So I'm very, very happy to be a part of it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
One of the things about art is that some art is extremely expensive, and therefore it only can be acquired by very few people. On the other hand, of course, artists need to live and earn money. How do you deal with that? Because I feel that you're saying that art should be available to many. But there sometimes is that discrepancy between the two.
Yeah, there are all different forms of art. For example, the one we just mentioned, that in the palaces, they were very expensive at the time when they were created. So I think it's only very recently that we started seeing more of an egalitarian expression in terms of acquiring art and owning pieces of artwork. So I personally think the only true way of owning my artwork is through experience. So you actually own one of the Sonic Blossom, the When Beauty Visits. So if an institution owns it, I hope it's the public institutions own my work, because for a private owner to own that type of work, it's, for me, I prefer to be a public institution. And how they own it, again, it's another question that I need to address. Yes. Yeah.
Lee, I'd like to relate to you a parallel thing to your mending. A lot of the artists I know, sculptors, they do what they call fix-it days.
Fix-it days.
Fix-it days. Bring in anything that you have that needs fixing.
Oh, wonderful.
And what they find is they fold themselves into the community. Sad to say, my studio does a lot of fixing on when days we didn't want to, but I have found it builds fabulous community. The other side of that, and you mentioned this, it's a way to find your creativity. When I'm stifled in the studio, I go fix something.
Yes, yes.
I think when you're not sure what the answer is, you start, or especially with your partner missing 9/11, you went and fixed it. You can't fix a situation, but you can fix something else. But somehow that gives you some kind of insight. So I'm always amazed. Sometimes I tell the guys in the shop, go ahead, break it, I'll fix it later. Just so I have some inspiration. But talk more about fixing and creativity.
Okay, fixing and creativity. I usually don't see my work as fixing something, because that assumes someone is broken or something is broken. I remember the Mending Project before the 9/11, growing up in Taiwan. When I was very young, I remember often we'll hear this bell in the summer evening. Okay, thank you. And kids will run out. So this young lady on her bicycle with a box behind her, and there are all those bobbins and needles. So she's there to, I mean, you have to pay her a little bit, but she's there to repair things, and that always is a very beautiful thing. And I know an artist in India, southern India, that's exactly what he does. He rides around the villages with a with a little box behind to repair people's clothes, and that is so beautiful. Yeah. So I personally think it's not about fixing for me. But there is a great tradition in East Asian also. There's an artist, my friend, Korean artist, who fixed the ceramic with gold.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, yeah, absolutely beautiful. And there's that practice in Japan and China and, yeah, in Taiwan.
Honors the object.
Yes, exactly. And the object is even more beautiful because it has history. And it's like us, we all have history, and that makes us so much more beautiful. Yes, yeah. Hi.
Hi. Could you talk about a work of art that you've had an intensely personal or emotionally intimate experience with, and what was the piece of art, and how did you feel about it?
I was just thinking I was in Stedel and was standing in front of great masters' painting that depicts this. It's a Dutch master, and in there was a picture of young women sitting there doing mending, and these were it says young ladies in incarceration. So maybe these are young women who I don't know why they were in prisons, but they were all sitting there doing mending, and that it's extremely moving for me just to see this group of young ladies sitting under the sun, and they all dress in some kind of uniform, but with very peaceful expression in their face. And yeah, I was looking and thinking about Mending Project here. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, I have a last curiosity.
Okay.
Thinking about Christine Marcel, she wants to point out the artist practice. So she asked the artist to produce a video about their practice. And your video is quite different from
underwhelming one.
an artist practice video. You don't show us your studio or everything else, but are you the eagle or the mountain?
Very good point. So the video, 3.5 minutes.
I sent them the confirmation with the link of the video, so
Okay,
maybe they
good.
saw it.
Yeah, so most of you saw at least the first minute or so. So at the end, there was an eagle that just came out and made the most beautiful cry, going, ah. So that room is my bedroom window. When I go back to my parents in Taipei, it's in this area called Yangmingshan. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful area. So that's my sanctuary where I go back and rest and watch. That morning when I got the request from Marcel, and I know there's a typhoon coming, so the cloud is absolutely beautiful. So I woke up very early in the morning and I just say, I'm going to video the whole thing for just 4 minutes. Whichever cloud comes in, whatever happens, that will just be it. No editing. So at 3.5 minutes, suddenly there's that eagle that just came in and disappeared. And I thought, that is exactly what my art is all about. It's about encountering at the unknown moment. And even if I try to put an eagle out at that moment, it will not do that, right? So it's like when you encounter, when beauty visits, it's about fate and chance. And it's meant that your life is going to collide. But the eagle didn't know I was recording it, and the eagle doesn't know it's going to be in the Biennale. Yeah. But it just went, and somehow it touched me in a very profound way. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
So if anybody has
any question
about
anything.
If not, we'll Okay, I think now it's your time to have
eat?
lunch.
Okay. I'm going to be around.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll
Thank
be...
you.
Thank you. Yes.